Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the EverSmart City channel. My name is Sophia Olivas. I'm the CEO of EverSmart City.
How's it going? My name is Mark Anthony, co-founder of EverSmart City. If this is your first time hanging out with us, be sure to like this video below and subscribe to check out more content and related information about EverSmart City. And if you've been here before, thanks for coming along. Today we're going to be talking about how EverSmart City is combating climate change, what we're doing to play a role into making the climate a better place and being stewards of the land. And to start off, Sophia is going to kick us off with a few goodies.
Yes, so this is the United Nations SDG goal number 13 about taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. So 2019 was the second warmest year on record. The information is still coming out about how it increased again through the years since COVID. And it was the end of the warmest decade ever recorded. The CO2 levels and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere rose to new records as well. Climate change is affecting every country on every continent. We are starting to see the new types of refugees are what is termed climate refugees. It's disrupting national economies and it's affecting lives. Weather patterns are changing. We're going to go more into that about how China's floodings is a direct result from COVID-19. Sea levels are rising and weather events are becoming more extreme, and they're expected to become even more extreme going forward. And although greenhouse gas emissions are projected to drop about 6% in 2020, they were, due to travel bans and economic slowdowns resulting from the pandemic, this improvement, it's only temporary because, as you know, the world is coming right back into business. So climate change, it's not on pause anymore. And once the global economy begins to recover from the pandemic, emissions are expected to return to even higher levels. Because as you saw, as soon as cities were able to remove the restrictions, the COVID restrictions, people went crazy. They just flooded those areas. So, you know, rightfully so. We've been in a cocoon, so I get it. So it's going to make it higher levels. And saving lives and livelihood requires the urgent action to address both the pandemic and the climate emergency. And so I wanted to look at some of the statistics that the UN brought because it was pretty startling. So from 1880 to 2012, the average global temperature increased by 0.85 degrees Celsius. To put this into perspective, for each 1 degree of temperature increase, a grain yield declines by 5%. So like maize, wheat, and other major crops, they've experienced significant yield reductions at the global level of 40 megatons per year between 1981 and 2002 due to warmer climate. I have personally witnessed in Costa Rica, where I am here researching for the Smart City, how the wine has been affected, the wine growing areas. They said they used to pick their grapes in May, and now they can't even pick grapes until September. That's months later. And I'm hearing these stories everywhere we go. I have been coming to Costa Rica for over 20 years, and I have personally witnessed in other places in the world where I have scuba dived and even snorkeled. I'm just blown away in sadness that all of the coral is dead. It's all bleached, and the fish aren't as plentiful as they were before. And those that are around, their colors are muted, almost as if they're still trying to blend in with this bleached coral. And the oceans have warmed. The amounts of snow and ice have diminished and sea levels risen. So from 1901 to 2010, the global average sea level rose by 19 centimeters as the oceans expanded due to warming and ice melting. And the Arctic sea ice extent has shrunk in every successive decade since 1975, with over 100 million kilometers of ice lost every decade. And given the current conditions and ongoing emissions of greenhouse gases, it's likely that by the end of this century, the increase in global temperature will have exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold compared to 1850 to 1900 for all but one scenario. Because the world's oceans will warm and the ice melt will continue. And the average sea level rise is predicted to well, it's going to be more than the tipping point. And most aspects of climate change will persist for many centuries, even if the emissions were stopped. So right now we at EverSmart City, we have some solutions that we are implementing as we are in alignment with this. Mark, why don't you tell them about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest things is safety. With a lot of these climate changes, Sophia mentioned flooding in China. We've all, if you're in America, remember most recently some of the flooding in Houston, and even further in the past in Louisiana for Hurricane Katrina, and as well as wildfires all throughout Arizona, California. Just running its course through our communities here in America, just and families and homes being torn apart through these natural disasters because the climate is reacting, and as we're taking steps to better be stewards of our land and treat the land better. Some of the things that we can do now to even reduce risk, and provide more safety for homes, and especially in these locations, is some of the ways that we're going to be building our homes using shipping containers, which is very important because they're air, wind, and watertight. Watertight is important in the flood areas, and they're very I wouldn't say fireproof, but flame retardant, flame resistant, and we're even adding other features to make it even harder. Forms like hempcrete. Uh, so in Arizona, we have a style of home exterior called stucco, which is kind of like a spray foam version of concrete, but we're going to be using a version of hempcrete to make it carbon negative. Our whole goal is to be carbon negative and use carbon negative materials and technologies, as well as hemp insulation. Hemp insulation is also carbon negative. It pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, as well as creates insulation for the home and helps reduce fire, ability to catch on fire. Since the hemp insulation is so compact and so compressed, it's hard for any oxygen to get through it. Then again, further diminishing or lowering the risk of fire. So in places like California where there are wildfires, yes, somebody would still need to evacuate their home, but their home could be returned to and be in livable condition instead of completely destroyed. Same as in flood zones where these homes that are air, wind, and watertight could withstand things like flash floods, which are important because these homes, as shipping containers, are designed to continue to be very mobile and shipped. So now these homes can be shipped out for different places in terms of risk reduction, preparing for natural disasters potentially, or even being there after the case, and protection. And like I said, these homes are made to be carbon neutral. And one of the other things we're going to be doing in our community on top of that is we're going to have what's called dark skies. We're going to be doing a lot of light reduction, and using different spectrums of light inside the city that are harmful, are harmless to the environment, especially at nighttime. In our cities, a lot of us don't know what a full night sky looks like in terms of stars because of all the lighting. In our communities, we're going to be implementing dark sky, which techniques, practices to lower that, as well as heat islands. Right now, like Sophia was mentioning, with some of the things that are going on around the world, with all of our machines and our cars and our paved roads, especially here in Phoenix, we see a lot with all of our asphalt roads and not a lot of amount of shade being in the desert, with just a few cactuses and skinny palm trees that the roads heat up quite a bit, and the asphalt holds that heat. So one of the things that we'll be doing also to combat that is using hempcrete as much as we can in our community walkways, sidewalks, to be able to, one, reflect heat, and then two, absorb the carbon, to be, as we want to create as small as a footprint to the economy or to the natural habitat as possible. And if anything, we want to um, support the natural habitat around us. So we'll even be planting habitat specific plants in our communities that will, one, purify the air, clean the air, but two, that are just natural plants for the insects, the bugs, the birds, even the bees to pollinate naturally, to support the local habitats and the environments where our communities are going to be in. Um, And then thirdly, or lastly, we're going to be, which we've mentioned a few other times in our other videos, you guys should check out if you haven't seen already. Also, check out our Discord, join our Discord to join us in this conversation there to learn more. But educational programs for students in high school, as well as other groups to learn and be educated more about this space, and have programs to raise awareness, to teach people, so we can start to make better decisions. So if you guys are interested in having conversations like and sharing information, be sure to join us in our Discord as well. We're going to be partnering with as many programs as we can find that are in alignment, that can help us in terms of being able to share this information, educate people, and raise awareness to humanity and to our communities, to this movement here.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring back in focus China and what we were speaking about the heat island, and a report that recently came out, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, on the record rainfall that was received in China in 2020. Scientists now have confirmed that a rapid drop in emissions was directly related because of COVID, and it played a key role in that record rainfall that China received in was it June and July in 2020. Because of the decline in greenhouse gases from the isolating and from everybody, from all the factories stopping production, all the people, all the cars just completely gone off of the roads, and small particles called aerosols caused atmospheric changes that intensified those downpours. Hundreds of people died and millions more were evacuated during that summer record rainfall. So it's just so interesting to hear that COVID actually impacted the climate. And I remember seeing the pictures from the Space Center, and they were showing pictures of the Earth, and they were like, it's never been as beautifully clear of a picture than during COVID, when there was just nobody outside and interacting. And that, of course, is not the way we're going to live. So that's not a solution. So let's take a look at some facts to wrap this up. As you can tell, we are very passionate about climate change and how we provide solutions and are looking to combat it. So, so we are just completely off track to stay at or below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold that was called for in the Paris Agreement, whose scientific study behind that has shown what would happen if we exceed that temperature, about the rising waters. And we're going to see that stuff and climate refugees coming into play more and more as places become more arable and unable to sustain life, and the rising greenhouse gas emissions, and what there is to do about that. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you next time. This is the Ever Smart City, where technology enhances human experience.